It's about our good friend Andrew Cuomo, who I think is still angry at the fact that Amazon has moved its headquarters because, as we all have seen in the past, Amazon was recently apparently defeated by a bunch of grassroots activists that asked them just a couple of questions and they ran away. So now Cuomo wants to file grassroots activists as lobbyists. So what's going on?
Yeah, I actually think this has less to do with Amazon specifically and more to do with grassroots activists that were trying to get members of the IDC voted out. So members of the IDC, the Independent Democratic Caucus, are essentially New York Democrats that vote Republican, that give an effective majority to Republicans. They're just Democrats that have a D in front of their name that vote Republican. So this is buried in the budget. So this is sneaky politics at its best.
New York politics.
New York politics, right? So imagine your grassroots organization, right? Your Indivisible, Empire Indivisible is one of the groups that they worked very closely with, but this affects numerous small groups. And you have postcards and you print flyers and you need some stamps occasionally and you get pizza. You know, maybe you get a charter bus for your volunteers to go to an event, and all of a sudden you've hit $500 in spending annually. Under the new law, if you spend $500 in your organization that has any comment publicly about policy or about politicians, you're now required to register as a lobbyist. That's what that provision would make. It brings that threshold from $5,000, right? What annual professional lobbyists spend all the way down to $500, right? So if you're just doing regular volunteer activist work, you're going to fall into that category of political lobbyist, which now that's a rhetorical thing that because people can say, oh, we don't like lobbying money. That now also includes these grassroots volunteer organizations, right? So now that's a rhetorical thing that's taken away from us. But also, there's a huge burden of filing that comes along with that. They have to file at least 6 times a year for expenditure reports. Everyone needs to take a $200 ethics exam if they're official lobbyist. It's basically meet this tiny little threshold of like, you're trying to do some activist stuff and now we've got a bunch of extra work for you to do now, huh? You want to do all this like the professionals do? You got a full-time job, you got kids at home, but here's all this extra head work that you got to do just to make effective change in your government.
Was there any voice
disgusting.
of opposition against this? Because it seems like, you know, this is a way to really silence anyone that would be against any kind of policies that should be passed by the state legislator or even the current governor.
Right. So more than 100 grassroots groups sent out a legislative memo saying that they're strongly opposed to this change. And they say, quote, unlike actual lobbyists, the high school students, retirees, public school parents, and others who devote their spare time to state politics, whether it's individuals or as members of grassroots groups like Indivisible, do not work on behalf of a moneyed special interest. We are not paid for our efforts. Rather, our groups rely on their volunteers chipping in whatever they can. Opponents say the $500 threshold is unrealistically low and can be met quickly. And that was what I was talking about, just flyers and a charter bus and just pizza for people. They're saying, we're not set up with the legal resources or the accounting services or the time to spend on what it would take to meet these requirements. He added, beyond his individual group, the lack of confidence, quote, the lack of confidence in what the rules would be would also be a big deterrent for individuals. This is a blatant legal way of bullying people away from engaging civically in their community, and it's disgusting.
You know what I have to take away from this is that this shows that the neoliberal establishment, especially in New York, really want to silence anyone that's going to challenge any of their policies. Look, New York, just like Illinois, has a history of corruption. It's just as bad as it is over here in our state. And Cuomo has been doing some really questionable policies, or at least trying to put on the mask that he somewhat cares about progressive issues, but then for the most part, what is he mostly doing? He's really helping out those.
He's shoring up his own power.
Yeah, and not to mention, how do you shore up your power? By getting rid of dissenting voices. We already saw what just a small question. I know it has nothing to do with this story, but a small group of dissenting activists, were questioning Amazon, which had probably a lot of support from a lot of New York political leaders. We saw Amazon just back away from their deal with New York because they were afraid of answering just a few questions. So, again,
because grassroots activism works.
Yeah,
it's effective.
It is effective, but towards the political establishment, they're afraid of that.
That's why we're getting stuff like this.
Yeah, and the thing is too, I know we're going to see more of it, especially as we enter into the 2020 presidential election cycle. It's just going to continue to happen, and it's wrong, and it shouldn't be allowed.
So this is interesting. So.
And real quick apologies. Sorry for any kind of technical delay with the sound. Thank you for letting us know, folks. We're working on it. Yeah.
So this is Rich as a Party is a senior advisor to Cuomo, and he's quoted as saying, "It's not just lobbying reform. It's lobbying reform and campaign finance reform and independent expenditure reform and voting reform and procurement reform. It's all related, and we have an unprecedented opportunity to increase transparency and disclosure and improve our democracy for the better. The fact that some self-described reform groups are against reform speaks to the problem in better ways than I can. That is such a disingenuous BS. That's defending power that's carrying water for the powerful." Yeah. Zephyr Teachout, who unfortunately lost her race in the last election, had a great tweet and says, "Cuomo has proposed a $500 threshold for targeting lobbying, for triggering lobbying requirements. This is not a solution to New York's very serious corruption problems. It is a proposed solution to Andrew Cuomo's grassroots activists stopping his plans problem, a problem we need more of."
Yep. And this is something that we need to see more of, at least nationwide, too, to where this is how the powerful react when they finally realize that the gig is up and that all of us have finally caught on to the big little show that they're trying to do for us. We already seen how the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment are working hand in hand with Wall Street, the big banks and corporations. We've seen how the corporate media tells a lie, how they try and do the law-abiding work for the American people and how they're trying to pass policies. But no. What has been the main objective of the Democratic and Republican establishment? It's to take money from a lot of lobby groups and make sure no one challenges them. And this is something that they're trying to do. They are afraid of the average citizen finally stepping up and getting involved. This is something we've asked a lot of people to do. Get involved with the political system and try and make an impact. Myself, Daniel, and Paul, we are former members of Wolfpack, Illinois, and here in our state...
They're going to put roadblocks in front of us every step of the way, and this is proof.
Yeah. And so,
get out there and show them we mean business.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to get more of the same, and that's how we got President Trump in the first place.
Hey, everybody. If you enjoyed that video, make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit that bell notification so you can hear when new videos come out. We'd love to see you every time we go live.